Matthew chapter 14. I'd like to talk to you about water walking today. Water walking. Now, we all know how to walk. We have two legs. Some of us have, our legs are better than others, myself included. We talk about walking in the park. We walk in the garden. We walk in museums. We can walk in green fields. We can walk with our friends. We can walk with a sweetheart. We can walk with loved ones. And finally, I want to talk to you today about an impossible walk on water. I want to talk to you about water walking. Turn with me to the scriptures. I know you have already opened your Bibles. Let's look at this text. It starts at verse 22. If you would stand with me. We're going to read from 22 down to 33. Immediately, Jesus made the disciples get into the boat and go on ahead of him to the other side, while he dismissed the crowd. And after he had dismissed them, he went up on a mountainside by himself to pray. Later that night, he was there alone, and the boat was already a considerable distance from land, buffeted by the waves because the wind was against it. Shortly before dawn, Jesus went out to them walking on the lake. And when the disciples saw him walking on the lake, they were terrified. "It's a ghost," they said, and they cried out in fear. But Jesus immediately said to them, "Take courage, it is I. Don't be afraid." "Lord, if it's you," Peter replied, "tell me to come to you on the water." "Come," he said. And then Peter got down out of the boat, walked on the water, and came towards Jesus. When he saw the wind, he was afraid and beginning to sink. He cried out, "Lord, save me!" And immediately Jesus reached out his hand and caught him. "You of little faith," he said, "why did you doubt?" And when they climbed into the boat, the wind died down. And then finally, verse 33 says, "Then those who were in the boat worshiped him, saying, 'Truly, you are the Son of God.'" May God add a blessing to the reading, the hearing, and the doing of his holy word. You may be seated. Well, we're talking about water walking. If you keep your eyes, when I thought about this text, I thought about looking at something, and I thought about how important it is to have a detailed understanding of that. Thought about looking at something. And one of the reasons I brought that, I'm bringing that up is because as I look at this text, we need to keep our eyes on Jesus. You and I will never sink if we keep our eyes on Jesus. Where are your eyes right now? Are they up here? Are they over there? Are they on me? Are they on them? Are they on somebody next to you? Where are your eyes right now? What are you looking at? Our eyes have a purpose, and that is to assist us in getting a detailed understanding of things or of a thing's features and exterior. In this text, we see in verse 22, the disciples are in a boat going to what Jesus calls the other side. Jesus goes up on the mountain to pray and to be alone, and by now the boat is long distance from shore. The boat is being battered by wind and by waves. And it's in the period of night called the fourth watch of the night. Jesus calls to them in verse 25, walking on the water. And in verse 26, the disciples see Jesus walking on the water, and they're terrified at this sight. Can I just stop right there and recount a memory of mine when I was a kid? When I was young, we lived on the north side over here, and one day my dad said, let's go swimming, let's go to the beach. And so we were gonna go to the beach, but nobody knew how to swim except my dad. So he brings us to the beach, and we're running around like we were crazy. Just running around the beach, crazy, just running. So he gets us out on the dock. So he gets us out on the dock. He says, I want to teach you guys how to swim today. And so we're like, okay. We didn't have time to be afraid because he didn't give us time. He took one of us and he says, it's time to start swimming. And he dropped us off the dock. So he's standing there watching us. And of course, there's water being swallowed. There's splashing going on. But eventually, we started to catch on how to do it. Because after he got everybody in there, he got in there with us. We could stand on the bottom. It wasn't too deep. But he gave us that little shock treatment of dropping us in the water. And I thought of that story when I was looking at this text because sometimes when we're called upon to do something for Jesus, we don't get to prepare ourselves. Sometimes we don't get to prepare ourselves. Sometimes we have to just be ready to go through with whatever it is he wants us to go through with. Now, the thing I like about Jesus, though, is he's always ready to be there for us. Somebody said, never alone. Never alone. When we talk about Jesus, we have to remember that he wants us to remember that we're never alone. Isn't it true that when he was born, one of the names given to him was Emmanuel? What does that mean? God is with us. So we're never alone. He's with us. And so when we go through trials, and we go through struggles, we go through storms, we go through difficulties, go through deep water, he's with us. He's with us. And so in this situation, there's a storm. In this situation, there's all kinds of churning going on in the lake. The water's coming over the sides of the boat. Can't you see that? There's probably lightning and thunderclaps. There's all kinds of upheaval going on. One of the things we know about the Sea of Galilee is that it was a lake. And because it was a lake and because of where it sits, in the place that it sits, weather can come up on that lake like that. And so you can see this storm raging. But the thing I like about this text is that it reminds us that even though the storm is raging, Jesus is with us. Jesus was in the boat. Jesus was standing by. Jesus was watching over the situation. Not from way over there, not from way up there behind the cloud, but he was there in the midst of it all. And so, as we look at this text, I want you to be mindful of that. The disciples were cast into a situation where they didn't get to prepare. Jesus said, go over to the other side. They got in the boat and they paddled and went to the other side. And while they're going to the other side, this storm comes up and they need help. They're terrified, the scriptures say, at this sight. And as they're looking across the lake, or they're looking in the water, and it's dark and it's late at night, they see a figure walking on the waves. And one of the first things they think is it's a ghost. Then next they cried out in fear. But Jesus responds. How does he respond? Take courage. It's I. Don't be afraid. Peter says to Jesus, Lord, if it's you, command me to come to you on the water. I want to walk on the water like you're walking on the water. I want to do what you're doing, Jesus. And so he gets out of the boat. Jesus calls him to come, and he's walking. How's he able to do that? That's an impossible walk. Have you ever tried to walk on the water? Have you ever tried it? Yes. I've tried it. It doesn't work. I'm a living witness. But in this situation, it worked. How did it work? Because Jesus allowed it to work. He calls Peter to come to him, and he's walking towards him because he's got his eyes on Jesus. He's got his eye on Jesus. He's got his eye on Jesus. Remember I asked you, what are you looking at? Where are your eyes right now? He was able to walk on the water because his eye was on Jesus. And the thing that pointed up to me immediately when I was thinking about this text and I was thinking about what the Lord would have me to preach was that you will never sink if you keep your eyes on Jesus. And so it's important for us to put that in your database, put that in your back pocket. Make a note to self that it's important for you, it's important for me, it's important for us to keep our eyes on Christ. Keep our eyes on Jesus. Now that sounds so simple. That sounds so easy. Pastor, why are you telling us something that sounds so simple? Because there's things that will come up every day to get our eyes off of him. Amen? There's storms that will come up in your life. Sometimes those storms have names. Sometimes those storms have faces. Sometimes those storms are persons, people, and places and things. And because of that, we can get our eyes so quick on that situation, on that thing, on that storm, on that whatever you want to call it. And when we take our eyes off of that, we're doing just like Peter did. When he took his eyes off of Jesus and he started to look at the waves, he started to look at the storm, what happened? He started to sink. He started to go under. He started going down, started having that sinking feeling. And that's what I want you to remember today, is when you take your eyes off of Christ, you're going to have a sinking feeling. It sounds so easy. It sounds so simple. It sounds so juvenile. But the point is, these things happen to us every day. Why am I telling you this? Why am I reminding you of this? Because I want us to be water walkers. I want you to be a water walker. Jesus wants you to be a water walker. Jesus wants you to be able to walk, to do an impossible walk.
That's right.
A walk that you can't do without him. A walk that can't take place unless you get with him. I need him every day. I don't need him just every day. I need him every hour. I need him every minute. And so as we think about being water walkers, we have to remember that I have to keep my eyes on him because he's the one that's going to enable me to make the walk. He's going to be the one that enables me to walk on the water, to walk on the waves, to keep my head above the water, to stay above the situation, to be able to stay in right relationship with those around me, in right relationship with him. There's trouble, there's things that are going to come up in our lives, but they can be managed with him. Amen? So as we look at this text, Peter says to Jesus, Lord, if it's you, command me to come to you on the water. Jesus says, come. And then because he sees this wind coming up, he starts to sink. But one of the things that we understand about that is after he started to sink, after he starts to go under, Jesus reaches down because he says, Lord, save me. You see how easy that was?
Yeah.
He started sinking. What did he say? Lord, save me. Help. And what did Jesus do? Immediately, the scripture says immediately. That means right away. That means there wasn't a gap. It wasn't you didn't have to wait. He didn't get a busy signal. When he called on Jesus, Jesus answered. And so when he said help, Jesus was able to help him. When we get in trouble, I want you to remember to call on him. Why? Because he's going to help us. He's with us. He's here among us. He's not some God way up in the sky behind the clouds, sitting high and looking low. He's here with us. And so when we go through trials and we go through situations, he's going to help us. And so as we're looking at this text, we can also see another situation. He asks him a question. He says, your faith is little. He says, why did you doubt? Don't doubt. What do we need to do? We need to feed our faith. We need to remind ourselves that God is expecting us to have a faith that keeps him in the middle of it all. That faith that we have has to be maintained, has to be tended to, has to be paid attention to, has to be tended to, has to be cultivated, has to be worked out, has to be added to. You can't just say, well, I got faith. That's all I need. On to the next thing. You got to pay attention to it. Got to feed it. Feed your faith. Feed your faith. How do we feed our faith? How do we feed our faith? Well, coming to the house of the Lord, like this place, being in relationship with other believers, that feeds your faith. Every Sunday, we have a testimony time. People talk about how God has been moving in their lives throughout the week. That's supposed to feed your faith. When you hear about God working in Crystal's life, don't just say, well, good for you, Crystal. Be encouraged that if he's doing it for her, he can do it for you. Be encouraged that these things that are taking place amongst the believers in this community, in this church body, can also be realized by each one of us. God wants us to Feed our faith by listening to what's going on with other people around us and recognizing that he's a God who wants to do the same thing for us. That feeds your faith. Feeding your faith also means we have to spend time with him. The disciples didn't just get in a boat and ride across a lake. They spent time with Jesus. They spent time day in and day out with Jesus. Why is that important? Because that feeds your faith. Spend time with Jesus, that feeds your faith. Spend time in his word, that feeds your faith. Why am I saying all of this? Because I think those are things that sometimes we can forget because we're busy. We can forget because there's things that we got to be involved with. There's work I got to do. There's places I got to go. There's people I got to see. There's things I got to do. And there's never enough hours in every day, right? There's never enough hours in every day for all the stuff I got to do. But one of the things we dare not do is allow our faith to become weak and sickly and puny. You don't want to have puny faith, do you? If you want to have puny faith, raise your hand. Good, nobody's raising their hand. Because we don't want to have that. You need strong faith. You need faith to live this Christian life, to walk this Christian walk. You need it. Got to feed it. Got to pay attention to it. Don't doubt. Have faith. So once they get back in the boat, the Bible says the wind stopped. Back in the boat. Jesus back in the boat. Everything's good. The lake stopped churning. Wind stopped blowing. Peace, be still. Those in the boat looked at him, looked at each other, and they came to a conclusion. What was the conclusion they came to? You, Jesus, are certainly God's Son. Why is that important? Because the world would have us believe that Jesus was just another man. The world would have us believe that he wasn't God, that he was a good teacher, he was a good person, did good things, definitely affected people, but he wasn't the Son of God. He didn't have that kind of power, and he certainly wasn't anything other than just a mere mortal man, just like you and me. When you go through some things, you come to find out that he's real. Amen? It takes us going through some things. We talk about having a testimony. Without a test, we can't have a testimony. I said, without a test, we can't have a testimony. So we got to go through some things to be able to have a testimony. I got to go through some stuff so I can tell you where God brought me from and where he brought me to. When I talk about those kinds of things, then you know there's been some things that have taken place in my life. God is bringing me along. God's brought me to something, and he's taken me higher. And I believe all of us want to go higher in the Lord. Amen? I believe all of us are excited about the thought of going higher in Jesus Christ. But it's important for us to maintain our relationship. It's important for us to see him in his true self, the Son of God. It's important for us to recognize that the relationship that he wants is a relationship that allows him to be God all by himself in our lives. And we have to welcome that. Sometimes I get in the way of that. Sometimes I won't let him be God. Sometimes I'm trying to help him out. And how many of y'all know he doesn't need help? I'm trying to speed it up, but he knows. He knows what he's doing. He knows how he's going to do it. And so sometimes I just have to get in the boat and let him do what he's going to do. I need to look around, take my time, lean back, and look into his eyes and recognize you are the Son of God. This text has a message that's good news today, because the idea of walking on water is not possible unless the Jesus of the Bible is with you and me. So today I want you to remind yourself, I need Jesus with me every day, every hour. You need to take courage and realize that it is him that is ready and willing to stand with you. Don't be afraid. He wants to be in the boat, riding alongside during the storm and in the waves, enduring the water coming inside your boat so heavily that the boat even might go under. Water, when we look at it sometimes as it's calm, you ever look at water when it's not doing much of anything on a really beautiful day? The water's calm and it's inviting, it's beautiful, doesn't make you feel afraid of it. But when the water begins to rage, when a storm takes place, then that same water can become very disquieting. It can become very frightening. When the storm comes and is threatening, then our emotions and our outlook can change to a high caliber of fear. Peter had a very special experience. He was allowed to be out there on the water in the middle of a raging storm when Jesus told him to come. And I believe he wants you and I to come. I believe he wants to extend that invitation to you and to me. Come. Come be with me. Come walk beside me. Come walk on this water. All he needed to do was keep his eyes on Jesus, and he was a water walker. Keep your eyes on Jesus, and you will never sink. When he found himself going down, he called out to Jesus, and Jesus immediately responded to him. Immediately he rescued him, and then they went back to the boat, and they had fellowship. Lastly, I'll remind you, to be a water walker, we need to keep our eyes on Jesus. We need to be careful about what we're looking at. And then we need to make sure that where our eyes are looking, they're looking at the right things, and they're looking at what Christ would have us look at, and be concerned about that on a daily basis. Jesus is calling to us to be water walkers. Will you accept the challenge? Will you accept the invitation? It is a challenge because some days are better than others, right? It is a challenge because some things sometimes get the better of us. But how many of y'all know Jesus wants to be there in our corner? He wants to be there with you. He wants to help you be the water walker that he's calling for. He wants to help you stand on the waves and not sink. If you keep your eyes on him, you won't sink. Be a water walker. God bless you. Shall we invite people up for special prayer if they'd like, or how should we do it? Okay. If you would like special prayer, I would invite the pastors to come up, and it'd be our privilege and our pleasure to pray with you.